This is a story about Kurata, a young and handsome pilot who is highly skilled, but his colleagues and friends often call him lucky. However, the term lucky is actually used in a negative sense because whenever he's on a flight, weather issues usually occur during landing, making it difficult and dangerous. Today, the same thing happens. The pilot jokes about the beautiful day, but soon they get information about a microburst near the airport, a dangerous weather condition for landing. They receive instructions from the control room on how and when to land safely. The female lead, Mayu, is also a skilled air traffic controller, and she's briefing Captain Kurata on how to handle the situation. Kurata hears her voice for the first time, and there's something magical about it that captivates him. Eventually, they make a safe landing, and Kurata wants to thank her, but she cuts the line before he can. At the airport, Kurata is shown as a nice, handsome, and sweet person who is always ready to help anyone in need, no matter how small the task. He's fascinated by Mayu's voice, and whenever he hears it on the radio, he stops and listens. Although pilots and air traffic controllers work in the same aviation department, their lives are very different, and they've never seen each other in person. Kurata becomes so smitten with Mayu that he shares his feelings with his friend, a technician at the airport. The technician, James, promises to help him find her. Meanwhile, Mayu's new colleague, Hari, joins the control room, and he's been assigned to train her. However, Hari doesn't want to train anyone and finds the task boring. Despite this, he goes along with it. Hari, like Mayu, is interested in the pilots and enjoys watching them rather than working in the control room. Days pass, and Kurata sees a school trip at the airport, which makes him nostalgic about his school days. During this time, two air hostesses approach him and try to get him to join them for dinner. However, Kurata, who is shy and single, tries to avoid them. While rushing, he accidentally bumps into a girl named Humayun, helping her prevent a fall, but accidentally knocking her handbag. He apologizes and helps her out, and a good friend of his, who knows Kurata well, jokes about his flirting with the girls. The story seems to be a blend of romance and the aviation world, where Kurata is beginning to feel more connected to Mayu and is learning more about the life of an air traffic controller. Kurata, the captain, had a large image over his role. After a little while, they find out that a student has gone missing during a school trip. They are searching everywhere for the student, and Kurata also does his best to help. A student who is with him notices a nameplate under his jacket and realizes that he is a pilot. They check his nameplate, and as they get closer, Mayu gets the impression that they are searching his pockets. She begins to think that Kurata is not only a pervert, but also a thief who steals children's things. He had a very impressive position, but the student eventually leaves. After a little while, Kurata finds the missing student. The student had been very scared, and when he saw the airplanes at the airport, he wondered how such big planes could fly. This created such a phobia that he ran away from the flight. Kurata helps him understand that many people work together to make flying possible and explains how the process works. He also reassures him by telling him that he has flown over 1,000 flights, and even a senior captain had flown 330,000 flights. This gives the student some comfort, and he becomes ready to fly. Later, Kurata often interacts with Mayu, who is the air traffic controller. However, he never finds out who is behind the voice. One day, he talks to Mayu's assistant and says that a controller had once helped him during a critical situation, and he wanted to thank that person. He asks if she knows who it was, since he wanted to invite that controller to dinner. Kurata uses this as a way to subtly gather information, suspecting that it was Mayu who helped him. He wanted to discuss the matter, hoping that some details about that voice would emerge. Meanwhile, Kurata remembers an incident involving a microburst and asks Mayu if she knew who had helped him. Mayu remembers the incident, but stays silent and doesn't reveal that it was her. However, she secretly admires Kurata from the beginning. Mayu had always been secretive about her past, so she lied to Kurata and told him that she was the controller he had been looking for. Hearing this, Kurata was overjoyed because he had finally found the voice he had been searching for. However, he realized that he wouldn't have recognized her voice since it had sounded slightly different on the radio. Nevertheless, he was happy and shared his number with her, and they became friends. Later, Mayu was riding her bicycle when her chain broke. Kurata, being helpful, fixed it for her. While doing so, he mentioned that before becoming a pilot, he had worked part-time in a bicycle shop, so he was quite skilled at fixing things. After a while, a group of drunk men passed by and nearly bumped into Mayu, but Kurata protected her. The next day, Kurata had a flight to operate. During the landing, there was heavy fog at the airport, reducing visibility. Many of the students on board were panicking, but Kurata was calm and in contact with Mayu, the air traffic controller. With her help, Kurata handled the situation smoothly and safely landed the flight. Over time, it seemed that Kurata had found the voice he had been searching for in Mayu, but he couldn't bring himself to believe it completely. He discussed this with his friend, James, and wondered if Mayu was the one he had been looking for. Just then, a senior pilot arrived and sat with him. The pilot mentioned that Mayu was very experienced and skilled, but she was currently only in training, though she was outstanding in it. She had never aspired to be a controller. She had always wanted to become a hostess, a fact she shared with the team. On the other hand, Kurata often found himself drawn to Mayu's voice, even though he never admitted to having a deeper connection with her. Meanwhile, he noticed that her personal life was quite a mystery. She had no family, just a grandfather who lived far away in a small town. Her life seemed lonely, and her room always appeared untidy. She didn't have a passion for cooking and often ate instant food. In contrast, Kurata was very organized. He kept his home tidy and clean, did all the chores himself, and was skilled at cooking. He also took great care of his home and meals. We also learned that air traffic controllers undergo annual training, and today, Mayu was attending her training. She was in the cockpit with the pilot during the flight, and coincidentally, it was Kurata's flight. The journey was smooth, and Kurata, impressed by how well Mayu handled the information, began to realize how skilled she was. In this part of the story, the pilot mentions that she has been searching for a particular voice that helped her in the past. She claims that it was Hari, but Mayu quickly realizes that this is a lie. However, she doesn't directly confront the pilot, but subtly mentions that she hasn't completed her debut yet and is still in training. After they successfully land the flight, Kurata is about to exit the cockpit when he accidentally bumps into something and almost falls onto Mayu. He manages to save her, but in the process, he drops his soft purse. Unknowingly, Mayu's key falls out of her handbag, which Kurata finds. Kurata thinks he should return it to her, but the weather conditions change, and they have to stay an extra day. Mayu, who is already happy to be in her hometown, stays at a place that turns out to be her home. Her grandfather lives there, and Kurata is referred to stay in the same house. Later, they have dinner with Mayu's friends, who joke about her bringing her boyfriend along, but both Mayu and Kurata deny the accusation. They claim they are just friends. Later, when Kurata helps Mayu with the dishes, they go out to see the night view. The area is hilly and beautiful, and Mayu shares that she had grown up alone without her mother. She had always looked at airplanes with her grandfather, dreaming that one day she would meet a pilot. As she shares her story, Kurata asks her to promise to take him to the control room someday to show him the beautiful view of airplanes lining up. Before she can promise, a sudden turbulence shakes them, and Kurata, feeling scared, asks Mayu if they have met before. He feels like he knows her. Back in Tokyo, Kurata hears the same voice again on the radio and realizes that Mayu is still just in training and hasn't controlled a real flight yet. Upon learning this, Kurata understands that Mayu had lied about being the controller he had been looking for. He finally recognizes the voice and realizes that it's Mayu. However, when they finally meet face to face, Kurata hesitates and avoids confronting her. Later, Mayu messages Kurata asking if they should go on a dinner date. Although Kurata initially wants to refuse, a child bumps into him, causing him to accidentally send an okay response. Mayu is overjoyed and immediately shares the news with her colleagues that she is going on a dinner date with a pilot. Mayu feels disappointed and disheartened when she makes mistakes while handling a flight. She had started her job with a lot of enthusiasm and had done well for a while, but later, she made a couple of errors, leading to a lot of embarrassment. One of the mistakes was a bird strike that she didn't notice, which caused chaos in the air traffic control room, making it difficult for them to manage the rest of the flights. Meanwhile, Kurata, who is a single father with a young son and a divorced wife, has a connection with Mayu. They both sit down for dinner in a restaurant, and Kurata notices a similarity in their personalities. At some point, Mayu, feeling disheartened, asks Kurata why he isn't showing any interest in her, claiming that she is young and smart. Kurata, however, tells her that he doesn't want to discuss anyone's negative traits, and only if she shows her good qualities will he appreciate them. Feeling disappointed, Mayu walks away, but Kurata follows her and assures her that she shouldn't give up. He expresses his admiration for her voice and tells her that he has been searching for that calmness for a long time. This conversation deeply affects Mayu. Later, there is an emergency situation in which Mayu helps in landing a flight in the middle of a storm after a passenger suffers a heart attack. With the help of the air traffic control team, they manage to land the plane safely and save the passenger's life. The family of the passenger wants to thank the pilot, but the pilot humbly acknowledges that the success of the landing was due to the teamwork of the entire control room and airport staff. As they are leaving, Kurata sees Mayu in the rain and offers to shelter her under his umbrella. The two of them walk together, but they hesitate to get too close. Kurata then confesses that he has been searching for her voice for a long time and wants to thank her. He says that he wants to fly with her on every flight just to hear her voice. Mayu, being introverted, remains silent after hearing this, and they both leave for home. The story concludes with Kurata having a child by his side. Actually, James's son, who was with him, had a wish to go camping. Using this wish as an excuse, James suggests to everyone that they should go camping together on their holidays. Before Mayu could respond, Reika immediately agrees to the plan, and the camping trip is confirmed. At that moment, the child turns on a video call, showing both James and Mayu, which causes Kurata some embarrassment. He feels awkward and doesn't have the courage to talk to Mayu, so he silently prepares for the camping trip. Kurata had initially thought that it would only be him, Mayu, and Nika on the trip, but to his disappointment, Nat and Gawa also showed up. Nevertheless, he stays quiet. The group divides into two teams, the aircraft team and the ground team. They compete to see which team will reach the destination first. Kurata, not being a good driver, gives his seat to Mayu. This becomes a competition between a pilot and a controller, and although the pilot is great at handling the aircraft, his driving skills aren't as good, so Mayu easily beats him. The group reaches the destination earlier than expected. Once they arrive, everyone enjoys cooking together and spending time with each other. During this time, Kurata gets the chance to get closer to Mayu. He begins to realize that Mayu is introverted and prefers to take things slow when it comes to relationships. If he wants to win her heart, he doesn't need to take big steps, but should simply spend time with her and try to win her heart gradually. Meanwhile, James realizes that Nika is interested in him, so he makes it clear to her that he is not looking for a relationship at the moment. His focus is on his son and career, so she should not have any expectations. This rejection frustrates Richa, and she vents her anger at Mayu. When Reika notices Kurata from a distance, she sarcastically comments on how all the boys are the same, showing no interest in them. She mentions that Kurata is clearly in love with Mayu's voice, but shouldn't get his hopes up, as Mayu is too introverted. Kurata might be fascinated by her voice, but he's just passing the time. Hearing this, Humayun's mood soured. Later, when they play a volleyball match, Reika beats them as she used to play volleyball during her student days. Embarrassed, they try to leave, but their car breaks down, and the mechanic will take some time to arrive. Meanwhile, Mayu goes off to find a lift, but during this time, some goons approach her. Seeing her alone, they attempt to harm her, but just in time, Kurata arrives to save her. He warns the goons to leave, saying, "This is my girl. Don't even think of touching her." After the goons run off, Mayu realizes how heroic and handsome Kurata is, coming to her rescue in such a stylish manner. The next morning, as Mayu is heading out to watch birds, Kurata follows her. They both stand together, admiring a rare species of bird. At that moment, Nat walks by, sees them holding hands, and his heart breaks. For a while, Radhika had been happy, as Mayu had asked him to stay a bit longer, but upon seeing them together, he feels upset. He asks Mayu to let go of Kurata's hand, which she reluctantly does. Mayu starts to regret her action, feeling that her behavior was too forward and fearing that it might push Kurata away. After all, she was introverted, and had previously mentioned how much she disliked forward gestures like kissing or making romantic advances. Meanwhile, Kurata and his friend are training to become pilots, and after their exam, they will be able to fly international flights. Kurata is nervous about how to approach Mayu again after their awkward moment. His friend suggests that he invite her to a fireworks festival in Tokyo. Kurata thinks this is a fantastic idea and quickly books a flight for the two of them, hoping Mayu will join him. He buys 3 tickets, and his colleague, Suki, arranges them for him. When she asks if there is a special person he wants to go with, Kurata replies, "She is very special to me," making Suki a bit more curious. Kurata then goes to Mayu and asks her if she would like to join him for the fireworks flight. Mayu, who had also been planning to attend, immediately agrees, and they both look forward to the trip together. They decide that after the landing of Kurata's flight, he will join Mayu for the fireworks flight. Kurata promises, "I'll definitely come, wait for me." Kurata was in a hurry for his flight, and his fellow pilots noticed that he was probably going on a date today. On the other hand, Humayun had also dressed up well, which made his colleagues suspicious that he might be going on a date too. Kurata's flight had 3 special passengers: a violinist who had a concert and didn't want to be late, a person in a wheelchair, and a pregnant lady. Everything was perfect when they took off, but the pilot mentioned that she was a bit confused because she was with a lucky co-pilot, and there might be weather disturbances. Still, everything seemed fine, and Kurata thought they would land 10 minutes early. Mayu, too, had arranged her shift so that she could meet Kurata later in the evening, but as the flight was about to land, they encountered thunderclouds, which delayed the landing. The passengers were anxious, especially those who had urgent destinations. Since they couldn't land at their planned location, Kurata decided to divert the flight to a nearby city, allowing those who needed to get somewhere urgently to continue their journey. Meanwhile, back in the control room, the news of Kurata's flight diversion reached Mayu, and Not noticed that she seemed upset. This reminded Mayu of a moment from her childhood when her mother had called her to the Tokyo airport, telling her that she would be staying with her family. However, when Mayu arrived, her mother wasn't there, and she had to wait alone. Now, at the airport, she waited again, thinking that life had betrayed her once more. Kurata, after his flight was delayed, finally lands. Suki meets him and says, "It's good that your flight was canceled. Some people used your tickets and went to the fireworks. I think I missed you. Maybe you were with someone else at the fireworks." Her comment pointed to Not. Hearing this, Kurata felt sad. He goes outside and calls Mayu, apologizing for not making it. He explains that the situation had changed, but now he's finally there. Meanwhile, Mayu is at the fireworks, and as she watches, it feels like Kurata is there with her. But to her surprise, Not is sitting next to her, someone she hadn't expected. Kurata, still feeling down, thinks about how he had promised to be with Mayu, but had let her down. As Kurata walks outside, he notices Mayu standing there, waiting for him despite all the hours that had passed. She tells him, "You promised me you would come, so I decided to wait for you." Kurata, deeply moved, wants to tell her that he loves her, but decides not to rush the moment. He says, "I don't need an answer right now. I know that you'll move ahead in life, and I'll be there for you when you're ready. I don't like guys who move too fast or kiss too early, so I'll keep a fast until you want to." Upon hearing this, Meyer gets a little disappointed and says, "I don't want any of this." "Because of me, our plans got canceled," Meyer says, and then adds, "It's okay. I was really excited for today. I was planning to take you to eat some amazing food in the city, especially from there. That's why I haven't eaten anything since morning." Hearing this, Kurata feels a little more embarrassed and suggests, "Why don't we go eat somewhere nice?" However, Kurata reminds Mayur that she has a flight tomorrow and he'll be very busy, so it will be too late. Mayur then suggests, "Why don't we go to my place today instead?" They go to his place, and he starts cooking dinner himself. He tells her that he has an upcoming flight training, and there will be a strict medical test for pilots. He has to take care of his health, so he doesn't eat outside food anymore. She wanted to help him cook, but she was so bad at it, she didn't know many basics and had to fix the food a few times. Despite the issues, they end up having a lovely dinner together. Kurata then shares a lot about her family. She tells Mayur that her parents were busy with work for years, so she learned to cook from a young age. Mayur was excited because after the training, she might get permission to fly international flights. Her dream was to fly her own plane and take her parents to their dream destination. Kurata also requests her to stop using formalities with his name and that they should call each other by sweet nicknames, just like any girlfriend and boyfriend would. After finishing the meal, Mayur doesn't want her to leave, so he says, "I make great coffee, please wait," trying to convince her to stay longer. However, Kurata is in a rush and uses the excuse that she needs to go early for work tomorrow. She leaves, and Mayur gets worried that he might have moved too fast and shouldn't have asked her to stay over at his place. Next, there's a shoot happening at the airport depicting the life of a pilot. Kurata is chosen to model for the role because of his handsome looks. The director tells them the details for the day, and Kurata mentions that pilots first discuss all the details of the flight before taking off. The acting, however, is so natural and involves some quirky actions. The pilot shown in the shoot is actually an international flight pilot flying the Ardana plane, while Kurata and Tara are the others involved. But the director says, "It doesn't matter, we just need a good shoot." Amidst this, Kurata receives good news and rushes to tell Mayur, saying, "I wanted to share this with you first. My transition flight training starts tomorrow, and after clearing it, I can fly international flights. This is such a big dream of mine that is about to come true." Mayur is thrilled for him. Later, they find out that only 6 people were selected for this training, which is very hard. The training will last for 6 months, and after passing the test, their planes and flights will be upgraded. The captain for this training is Captain Mirai, who is very strict. He made 2 teams, and Kurata's partner is a fellow pilot. They have to work together in the team, and their performance will affect each other. The training is very strict, and sometimes they face difficulties and have to refresh themselves. Everything else is going well, but there's one team member who seems very arrogant and thinks he's superior. He doesn't cooperate with anyone, while the others keep trying to guide him. These days, your boyfriend must be feeling very busy, so you must be feeling disconnected. People keep advising you to not let Kurata go free, keep messaging him, and sometimes visit him so that after the test, you don't end up being forgotten by him. Meanwhile, James arrives and invites those people to his son Shan's birthday party. He has booked the entire restaurant for it. Kurata, in the middle of his training, goes to check out his old plane, which he hadn't seen in 3 years. He gets nostalgic, especially since his promotion was due, and now he wouldn't be flying this plane anymore. After gathering so much experience, he had grown attached to it. Radha barely gets any time and is mostly busy with her studies. However, one day, Kurata calls her and tells her that some important training is starting tomorrow. After the theory lessons, they would start practicing on a simulator, and grading would follow soon. Due to his busy schedule, he hasn't been able to meet her, but he promises to attend Shan's birthday party, as he knows she will be there too. One day, Radha remembers when she had visited the airport with her parents as a child. She had always wished to be a pilot and was excited to see the big planes up close for the first time. At the airport, Mayur was also there, feeling sad. It was the same day when her mother didn't come to receive her. Kurata walks up to her and asks why she looks sad when everyone around is happy seeing the planes. They talk for a while, and he tells her that being a pilot is not just about flying. There are many other important roles, like technicians, ground staff, and air controllers, all of whom contribute to the flight. This makes her reflect on her own life, and she wonders where the girl who once had dreams of being a pilot is now. The next day, Kurata practices on the simulator, but one of his friends advises him to work on improving himself first, instead of competing with others in the group, as he's ahead of everyone. Meanwhile, Kawari is standing next to them, jokingly teasing him about how he seems to have a special interest in Mayur. He tries to compliment her, saying she has been doing really well lately. Seeing this, Hari notices that his heart flutters at the attention Kawari gives him. One day, Radha visits Kurata at his house. She doesn't want them to drift apart due to the distance and the training, so she brings him some vegetables to eat since he doesn't like eating outside food. Kurata is happy that she made time to visit him, but his friends arrive shortly after, bringing food as well. They meet her warmly, realizing that she is his girlfriend. They feel they might have disturbed them, but Kurata reassures them. However, Radha, who doesn't enjoy being around people, leaves the gathering. As she leaves, she says, "You're very special to me. Don't forget that." Mayur had left an energy drink for Kurata, and as she was about to go inside, she overhears his friends talking. They mention that Kurata once had a girlfriend who was very much like Mayu. During those days, Kurata couldn't spend time with her due to his training, and that's why they broke up. They warn him to be careful, so it doesn't happen again. Kurata hears a noise and sees that it was Mayu who had left the drink for him, but she had already left. He becomes worried, wondering if his friend's words might have upset her. The next day, Kurata continues his practice on the simulator, where he faces challenging situations, such as landing the plane in a storm or dealing with low visibility. The tension builds up as he makes decisions during these scenarios. The pilots are undergoing training on how to handle the plane, and Captain Malai is praising them based on their performance. Meanwhile, Sean is hosting a birthday party with a pirate theme, and many people have attended. James is very happy for his son. Later, during a performance, Captain Malai tells him that he heard that he is a lucky pilot, and today it has benefited him. He also mentions that his learning has always been under difficult circumstances, and he had excellent training on how to handle situations in real life. After such practical training, he is actually ahead in practical scenarios. Kurata wanted to message her and ask when she would come, hoping she hadn't forgotten the story. But then she deletes the message because she doesn't want to seem clingy. She feels she's superior, but whenever they do practical work, Kurata always outshines her. Whether it's landing a plane or making difficult decisions, Kurata always excels. He says, "I can teach you a lot from my experience and help you," but Okijama gets angry, saying, "You're not in a position to teach me anything." Suki notices their conversation and asks Kurata to sit with her. She says, "When you were training to become a first officer, it was very difficult, and that's why we broke up." She begins reminiscing about the old days, but Kurata is uninterested in these conversations. Suddenly, he remembers that he was supposed to attend the birthday party, and his girlfriend must be waiting for him. He rushes to change and goes to the restaurant, but finds that the party is over by the time he arrives. He finds out that Mayu had gotten a bit upset and had drunk quite a bit earlier in the day. He offers to drop her home, and they sit together. She is drinking water when he tells her, "Pirates always get the spotlight, and your boyfriend is perfect. He's humble, without any attitude." But Mayu feels uncomfortable because their personalities are completely opposite. She's antisocial, while Kurata is social and everyone's ideal person. At this moment, Kurata arrives and tells her, "I'll take my girlfriend from here." They start walking, and Mayu, a bit angry and upset, asks, "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you say that I shouldn't have drunk during the day? Why didn't you tell me I'm a troublemaker?" But Kurata understands she is upset, so he doesn't say anything. He just holds her hand and apologizes for being late. The next day, when Mayu wakes up, Kurata's son is watching them, and she feels awkward. Later, they both make breakfast together, and his brothers love the coffee Kurata made. Suddenly, Kurata starts receiving multiple notifications on his phone, which are messages from Suki, asking if she can meet him and remembering the good old days, as she used to be very beautiful and younger than Mayu. This makes Mayu feel insecure. She's bothered by this when she receives news that her grandfather's health is very poor, so she immediately heads to her hometown. Meanwhile, Kurata is at training, where he checks a message he received from one of his girlfriends. He tries to talk to her but realizes that the two of them just don't connect. Later, Mayu, on her way to her hometown, recalls how her grandfather's health had worsened suddenly, and Kurata gets his medical test results, which are perfect. The doctor tells him, "Your report is completely fine, so don't worry, and prepare for the next step." The story takes an unexpected turn as Mayu's misunderstanding deepens. She saw messages from Suki on Kurata's phone and assumed that he was still in contact with Suki, leading to growing tension. She also saw a message where Suki had mentioned meeting him the day before and had always told his brothers that he was busy. Mayu's jealousy only grew, especially when she saw Kurata's pilot girlfriend taking him out to dinner. It was clear she was aware of their ongoing situation. Meanwhile, Captain Murai brings both Mayu and Kurata together and tells them that if things continue this way, they won't be able to work as a team. They need to stop seeing each other as enemies. Mayu insists that she doesn't think they are compatible, but Captain Murai explains that good pilots are made through experience, and Kurata's background offers a different experience, something worth sharing and learning from. The two are sent to Kurata's house, where they reflect on their old memories. They were batchmates, and Kurata had always been outstanding. While Mayu had cleared her exams on the first attempt, Kurata had failed 2 or 3 times. Still, Kurata's lucky experiences helped him progress, and now he was back on track because his grandfather had pushed him to succeed. Mayu, meanwhile, was making good progress in her career, working hard at an office in Tokyo, although she had stopped replying to messages from the brothers. She was too busy calming her mind. Her promise was still unfulfilled, and she faced difficult questions in her training. While Mayu was good at theory, Kurata had struggled to perform well initially. They later worked on a simulator where a situation arose where one engine failed. They worked together efficiently as a team to handle the situation, and Captain Mirai noticed their improved compatibility. The dinner speech from the previous evening had softened the misunderstandings between them. Mayu fell ill the next day because she had been traveling the day before and had worked a long shift at the office. During this time, Kurata and Mayu learned that they had cleared their results and would be moving on to actual flight training. The pressure intensified as they would now have to fly real planes, and Kurata messaged the brothers. During this time, Suki, whom Mayu couldn't talk to, was forcibly dragged by his employer to a dinner meeting, and Mayu's misunderstandings deepened. At the dinner, Kurata invited Mayu to a venue where he revealed that he had chosen it for his wedding. However, Mayu realized that he was not interested in the venue, but was instead inviting her to his wedding. They joked with each other, saying they didn't hurt each other intentionally. Mayu confessed that she did love him, but he insisted that he wasn't a pilot. The pilot has his own struggles. When he's returning, he goes to Kurata's place, and his father-in-law starts scolding him. He asks if Kurata even knows that Mayu is sick, and yet he's spending time with Suki. Meanwhile, Mayu's grandfather is also ill, and he's stressed due to overwork. Kurata is shocked to hear all of this because he had no idea. Later, he visits Mayu's house and enters. He asks her why she didn't tell him about the tension she's going through. Mayu replies, "Why should I tell you? You have time to go out for dinner with Suki, but you don't have time for me." She adds that he was lying about being late and was actually with Suki. She tells him that they might not be compatible and their relationship might not last. Kurata gets angry and leaves without saying anything. Meanwhile, Kurata had thought that he would work on a project later, but for now, he was undergoing flight training, which he needed to complete before getting his flying license. On the other hand, James comes to Reika and asks her to go out for dinner. She's initially happy, but then says, "My son is busy with his friends, and I don't know what to do now." She becomes upset and tells him that she's not interested in entertaining boring people. In frustration, James goes to his friend's house to drink, but then he's told that his transfer has been finalized. Later, Kurata goes to his house and looks at some old childhood memories, including photos he took at the airport with his family when he first arrived. He calls Mayu and tells her that his flight training will be over on Friday, and he wants to meet her to clear things up. Mayu wants to tell him that she's leaving for her hometown, but she agrees to meet him that day. She reminds him that he has the keys to her house. Kurata's performance impresses everyone, and even his mother surprises him by attending his first flight, saying that she wants to fly with him. His instructor, Captain Mura, also wishes him good luck. But there's a twist. Captain Mura, who had worked closely with Kurata, has now been suspended due to an issue with his eyesight, which makes him unable to continue flying. Mayu, on the other hand, is on a break and is taking care of her grandfather. She expresses her desire to transfer and take care of him. However, her grandfather tells her that he wants her to continue pursuing her career and to become the best. He recalls how she supported him after her grandmother's death and urges her to follow her dreams. Finally, Mayu goes to Radha's flat to wait, as planned. The scene begins with Kurata being busy with his flight at the airport when he sees something of importance. He notices a box containing childhood memories, and as he goes through the photos, he realizes that the boy in the pictures is the same one he met at the airport years ago, the day his mother did not come to pick him up. A flashback follows where we see Kurata's brothers telling him that pilots are not the only ones who fly planes. There are technicians, attendants, and even control office workers who are heroes. Kurata was deeply impressed by this and declared that he would become a pilot. His brothers then asked him to instruct them to become air traffic controllers when they grew up. Years later, Kurata became a pilot, and his brothers learned that the air traffic controller they had talked about was Kurata himself. After realizing this, Kurata's life takes a turn, and his relationship with the girl becomes more complicated. Kurata is now tasked with landing a plane at a small airport, and there is some confusion. The air traffic control office gives him permission to land, but there is an issue with another plane preparing for departure. Kurata is forced to make another round, as even a small delay could result in both planes colliding. This causes Kurata a lot of stress, as he recalls how, when he was younger, his parents used to travel on planes. Eventually, an investigation is carried out to determine if the accident was due to human error. Kurata fails his line training that day, adding to his frustration. As the return flight is delayed, Kurata sends a message to his brothers, and the girl receives it, realizing that he will be late. She wants to tell him that she is the same girl he met years ago at the airport, but Kurata is too upset and doesn't want to talk. He simply apologizes and walks away. Afterward, the girl notices that Kurata's mental state is not well, as he had once been someone who would always help others, but now he is withdrawn and lonely. He doesn't communicate with anyone, and even when she tries to reach out to him, he remains distant. Kurata calls her one day and apologizes, explaining that he has been feeling disturbed and won't be able to talk until his next line training is successful. Meanwhile, the girl gets a call from another person who informs her that he might have caused some misunderstandings between them. She learns that Kurata had been meeting someone named Suki and that Suki is getting married, which is why she had invited everyone to her wedding. Upon hearing this, the girl's emotions change, and she feels conflicted about what to do next. The misunderstanding between Kurata and the girl starts to clear up. The girl had begun to take an interest in Kurata, especially since he was her instructor. However, she was conflicted because she enjoyed the idea of flying and wanted to be a pilot, but was being urged to become an inspector instead. Meanwhile, Kurata was still struggling with his own emotions and tensions from his job. Feeling overwhelmed, Kurata decides to leave his flat and go stay with his mother. He shares his concerns with her, explaining the immense stress he was under. However, his mother reassures him, saying that they had no worries and assumed it was just regular flight issues. Kurata, though, was unable to release his emotional burden and didn't know whom to talk to. Later, Kurata meets with Captain Murhai, who, despite his strict demeanor, understands Kurata's troubles. Captain Murhai shares his own story about how he was once a paraglider with a passion for flying, but faced a near-death accident due to high pressure in the air. After the scare, he had decided to never fly again, but his instructor encouraged him not to give up. His instructor told him that if he didn't fly, who else would? It was his responsibility, and he had the ability to ensure others' safety. This conversation motivates Kurata, and he decides to face his fears and continue flying. Meanwhile, the girl, though antisocial, starts having a heartfelt conversation with her aunt. She shares her feelings, talking about how she had met someone as a child, and now, after so many years, has reconnected with him. Her aunt is touched by her words. As Kurata arrives at the scene, he is surprised to see the girl with her aunt. He takes her to his house, where he finally expresses that they need to clear their misunderstanding. The girl responds, telling Kurata how much she missed him and how worried she was about him. However, when he appears before her, she becomes angry as she realizes that being a pilot doesn't mean that Kurata is the only one responsible for flying the plane. There are many others who help in making the flight possible. She repeats the same words he had said to her in childhood and walks away, leaving Kurata to reflect on whether or not he will be able to understand and resolve the situation with her. Kurata starts thinking with some hesitation, and then remembers that, in fact, she is the same girl he met at the airport years ago. Meanwhile, James, who had shown interest earlier, tells her that when he's busy with work, he wants to spend time with the people who matter the most to him, and she is one of them. Hearing this, Reika can't believe her ears. It seems they are becoming a couple now. That day, Kurata has a flight, and this is another test of his performance. Today, he is feeling very confident and has regained his enthusiasm. He feels happy and says, "Sure, I'll clear things up today." As they take off, the takeoff process is going smoothly, and the flight structure seems stable. However, on the way, a new problem arises. A passenger suddenly has a heart attack, and his condition worsens. There is no doctor on board to help. Now, the captain has to make a difficult decision. The destination is far away, but there is a nearby airport. However, due to a forest fire, landing there is not an option. The captain asks Kurata what decision he would make. Kurata replies, "Sure, our job is to get passengers to their destination, but in this emergency situation, I believe we should return to Tokyo and land there for the patient." So, they turn the plane around. But as they approach Tokyo, it turns out that there is a massive storm there, and heavy rainfall is making landing very difficult. Kurata realizes that planes are not flown only by pilots. Many others contribute to making the mission successful. He encourages his team. "We will show that we can do this." As they get closer to the airport, the storm subsides and the sun begins to shine. Kurata feels overjoyed that the tough decision he made was supported by nature, and they manage to land the plane safely. The patient is quickly taken to the hospital, and after that, they resume their journey and head toward their destination. After handling the flight, Kurata returns and finds Reka waiting for him. Now it's their time, free from all the tension. They are in the same place where they first met 10 years ago. Meyer says, "If my mom had come to pick me up that day, we wouldn't have met. But now, I consider myself lucky. It's good that my mom didn't come that day, you did. You showed me a dream, and after that, I found a purpose in life. And today, you are here with me too." Kurata replies, "I know you were thinking of going back, but please, I'm here with you now, and I want to be with you always. I want to be in the winds with your voice, and when I return, I want you to be with me." At this moment, Kurata officially proposes to her. They make a pinky promise that they will always love each other and keep each other happy. Kurata kisses her, and thus their happy life begins. Kurata is now a successful pilot, always taking care of his health and home. Mayur, however, hasn't changed much. She still wakes up late, skips breakfast, and grabs instant food to barely make it to the office. But there's one change. They are in a relationship, and Mayur now has keys to both houses, Kurata's flat and hers. This change brings her immense happiness. She has found her true love. Meanwhile, Kurata receives a card from the family of a patient he saved, thanking him for saving their father's life. Kurata, as always, is happy with his work. But even now, whenever he hears Humayun's voice, he stands still and listens. He still loves her voice, but now he has accepted that life moves on. And with this, the drama ends.